A very good morning and a warm welcome to the CNBC Africa special as we come to you live from the sidelines of the World Economic Forum on Africa here in Cape Town for 2019. My name is Gugulethu Mfuphi and I have the pleasure of being your moderator this morning as we look to interrogate the level of support that is received by female entrepreneurs across the African continent. Now, in a world where women make up more than 50% of the world's working population, we only contribute at least 37% to global GDP. But we are looking at changing this through enhanced collaborative efforts and within the context of the fourth industrial revolution, digital skills, and of course the age of technology. It's now more than ever that we need to focus on an enhanced contribution to developing female entrepreneurs who will thus continue to drive and influence the economic narrative and culture of more countries across sub-Saharan Africa. A warm welcome once more to our viewers who are joining us live on CNBC Africa and those on Facebook Live. And of course, as you can tell, our wonderful audience who's joined us this morning here at the Cullinan Hotel in Cape Town. Well, we'll be engaging in this conversation, and this follows a launch which is going to take place, She's Next, an initiative driven by Visa to ensure that we see enhanced support and backing for female entrepreneurs, together with engagement from some of its partners in this contribution. I'd like to introduce my panelists who will be joining us in this conversation that we'll host over the next hour and really try to drive solutions, understand the landscape, and of course, most importantly, leave here more empowered and enlightened as to how we can all make an impact in changing the narrative around female entrepreneurship. Starting off closest to my left, Ada Diarra, who's a Senior Vice President and General Country Manager for Sub-Saharan Africa at Visa, followed by the Honourable Minister, Boholu Kenewendo, who's the Minister of Investment, Trade and Industry in Botswana, followed by Mitch Atangana, who's the Head of Communications and Public Affairs at Google, and Arantxa Gonzalez, Executive Director for International Trade Center. A warm welcome to you all, ladies, and thank you so much for participating. I think in a world where we always talk about the lack of gender parity and just how long it will take for us to get there, we deserve a round of applause for an all-female panel of powerful females in the respective roles that they serve. And let's actually start there, because each of you represent different stakeholders as well as groups of interest who look to continue driving the development of female entrepreneurship. But what is it within the context of the ITO, Google, the government of Botswana, as well as Visa, independently, that you all play with regard to driving the development of female entrepreneurship and enhanced economic contribution? Arantxa, I'd like to start with you as we make our way down the panel.
Sure. I want to start where you left it. This is not a discussion about women talking to women on women's issues.
Yep.
This is a discussion about how do we make our economies stronger, more resilient, delivering for all, for men and for women alike. How do we make sure that we don't leave all the assets that women represent stranded out there somewhere because we've got legislation, rules, laws that discriminate them, because we've got practices, not when the laws are the same practices, social norms, culture, that don't see the women where they see the men in the economy. That's the discussion we need to have. Again, it's not just for women. It's to make sure that economies grow so much and so solidly that they can deliver for men and for women too. And this is very important, because sometimes I have the impression that if we make this just a women's issue, we're going to lose half of those whose mentalities and whose support we need to change the current status quo. The reality is today, as far as I can see in the area of international trade, it's not delivering for women and men. Women entrepreneurs are basically almost 40% of all entrepreneurs, but only 1 in 5 exporters is a woman-owned business.
We'll come back to that in just a moment. Mitch, let's get your perspective from Google.
Absolutely. So I agree. This is not a women's issue. This is a world issue, and we need to deal with that. But also, it makes good business sense to have diverse leadership teams. So forget, when you think about entrepreneurship, that's one aspect, but even in big business as well, if you have women who are in your leadership team, you will make more money. What does business want? More money. From a Google point of view with entrepreneurship, as a company, we still think of ourselves as a startup. We really shouldn't, but we do. Mm-hmm. And each of our officers, we believe we are all entrepreneurs. We have this whole saying, act like an owner, win as a team, right? So it's really important that there are women in that discussion. There are women who are contributing to that thought process. They are in an African continent. we cannot succeed if business in Africa doesn't succeed. And if more than half the population on the continent are women, they need to found businesses that will employ more people and grow the economies of the continent. So absolutely needs to be a world issue.
Minister Kinewenda?
Well, I think, first of all, it is quite unfortunate that I'm the third speaker. I have no idea what you're going to say. Because they took everything. I don't know what you're going to say. But I think they have said it quite well. You know, you can't win when you have 50% of your population being left out or being left behind. And the reality of countries like mine, Botswana, and other African countries is that the engine actually of growth is women, and the main drivers of the informal sector, and you want to bring them into the mainstream economy to ensure that they are active participants in the economy and that you are servicing them right so that they can continue to power the economy. So as a government, we all have to be responsive and relevant, in touch with the issues that women entrepreneurs have to deal with. And once again, it's not just about women entrepreneurs, it's about entrepreneurs creating a conducive ecosystem for entrepreneurs to thrive, but being sensitive to the special and unique challenges that women and young people, I'll throw that one in there, women and young people are facing in an economy.
Yeah. You've got a tough challenge, Aida.
I know, so I'm going to try to live up to it. At Visa, we're in a unique situation where, because of our global footprint and because of our payment network and the fact that we are a leader in digital payment, we are in a unique situation to design solutions for SMEs by offering them cash flow management tools and acceptance mechanism, either through the traditional way we accept through POS or through innovation. So now when we see that women today represent, you said it, close to 40% of entrepreneurship, we believe that we have a role to play to give them access to these tools, to bring them into the financial formal system, and to enable them to continue to develop. So that's what is driving our agenda here today.
What's quite refreshing is that we certainly see a concerted effort from many of our parties and participants here on stage to continue driving the role of female entrepreneurship, and several themes that have been highlighted regarding the involvement and unique needs of both youth as well as women, the digital skills and, of course, platforms that are required. But most importantly, I'd like us to touch on trade, because ultimately for all entrepreneurs to thrive, you need access to markets. You need people to work with, people to buy and sell from. With regard to the element of trade, why are we seeing that the figures still sit at single digits with regard to how many female entrepreneurs are actually able to capitalize on trade opportunities? Minister, I'd also like you to come in there to provide some insight as to what the significant challenges are and, most importantly, how we need to counteract them with solutions. Arantxa, let's start with you.
Yeah, I mean, this is the question we asked ourselves when we looked at the figures. We said, is it that women don't want to be participating in international trade, or is it that they face specific difficulties? Because if it's the former, okay, fine. Then the answer is a bit different. It's more about encouraging, and it's more coaching, it's more mentoring. But if it's the latter, then we've got to work on the structural impediments that prevent women from participating in trade, and it's a bit of the two. There is a certain, daunting task of moving across borders that sometimes women, who often are smaller in size, face. But then there are structural impediments, and I really like that we're talking credit, because I think access to credit and capital is a big impediment. Yes. Many traditional financial institutions think that women are, it's more dangerous to lend to women-owned businesses than it is to lend to men-owned businesses for no good reason.
And tell us why it's that C word, right? Collateral.
Yeah. Well, there is a question of collateral. There we go to the laws that don't allow women to own assets, to inherit assets, to open a bank account, to sign a contract without the permission of the husband, the brother, the father. So we've got a lot of work to do to unpack all these problems in accessing credits, not presence in the business networks that allow you to connect with other markets, not having enough knowledge and information about where the market access opportunities are, having more harassment and difficulties at the border than men.
Yes.
I mean, all this is the world that we need to unpack in each one of our countries in order to remedy this. Again, not because we want to be nice to these women entrepreneurs, but because they also can contribute to more solid growth.
Minister, share your thoughts with us.
I think first I want to start with that we are seeing some change. So the challenges that Arantxa has outlined are real, and there are those that need to be addressed. And to start off with the collateral issue, legislation that has traditionally hindered women's participation in the economy. For example, owning land. When you're married, you cannot own your own piece of land. You know, your husband has land, you can't have it. And we've seen actually in the last couple of months, both in Botswana and South Africa, such legislation changing. And we are enabling women to be owners and therefore to have access to credit. But I think we shouldn't just limit ourselves to access to credit. We should talk about more depth and breadth in financial inclusion. And we are talking about access to credit, but also where are the women playing in this space? And if it's in the micro and the small enterprises, then how do we start to introduce them to insurance policies? Because once that small consignment goes up in flames, then it's back to square zero. It's even negative, you know, you're completely failing and it's very difficult to come back up. So what kind of services in the breadth and depth of financial inclusion can we offer to these women to try to deal with some of the challenges that they will face? And then cross-border trade, again, 1 in 5 women or traders, 1 in 5 traders are women. I think that is a very sad figure for us to be talking about. But it speaks to, once again, what level are we trading at and what are the challenges? You know, when you get at the border and you're dealing with smaller consignments, why do you still need to pay 40% duties, right?
Yes.
And we have to address those issues as member states to ensure that, again, we are sensitive to the issues that are being faced by women. But I also don't want to restrict myself to SMEs and women that are doing smaller cross-border trade, because there is nothing micro about women, right? They can play even in the bigger spaces. And when we are thinking about providing financial solutions to women, we should also think about the next woman who will run Google and the next woman who will discover a unicorn and be sensitive and be sensitive to the needs of women in tech space, be sensitive to women, to the needs of women who are trying to run global conglomerates.
Certainly. And I want us to add on to that, because as you say, we need to be sensitive about the hard structural infrastructure issues as well. But we live in a digital age where barriers to entry can be reduced as we capitalize on the technological innovations that have been brought forward. And I'd like us to move towards the solutions. Are we actually able to find that in order to enhance trade, the border control, and of course access to markets, and even knowledge between various female entrepreneurs to actually understand that, look, I've got a potential client in another market, and this is an easier way for me to actually move goods and services to them. What are we seeing from an innovation and technology point of view? And are there also some enabling tools that government or the ITO is also trying to implement? But let's start off with our tech players. Mitch and Aida, let's get your views.
Sure. You know, what we're noticing is that, you know, digital payment is just enabling possibilities and fostering economic development and growth. Yeah? What we see, for example, from a government perspective is that they are leveraging digital payments to reach out to households in remote areas to issue payments. Yeah? And that brings transparency to the WellCare programs and initiatives they have. If you bring that down to consumers, today, a customer that did not have access to a financial instrument or service can have access to credit through the phone. So this is just amazing, enabling possibilities. And then when it comes to SMEs, they can now have access to e-com, offering their services not only locally, but also internationally. So we truly believe that enabling digital payments is going to foster economic development and prosperity. Yeah? The question becomes, how do we do that, taking into consideration the imbalance and the fact that there is no access for women, or there's less access to women to have access to bank accounts, to have access to the internet, to have access to mobile accounts, And this is what we need to prioritize our efforts around and create that inclusion and drive economic development. You know, we look at some of the research telling us that if we are successful at doing that, we can add more than $4 trillion to emerging economies and close to 95 million jobs. So think about that. It goes back to your point in saying it's not a women's issue, it's a global
Exactly.
concept. Yeah.
Mitch, if we could get your views very briefly, and then Arantxa, I do want to come to you to give us some of your thoughts as you challenge us just before you do leave our panel in just a moment. Mitch?
Yeah, I think that a key part of that is internet access is really important. So digital payments is one thing. If I have a business in South Africa and I want to trade to Botswana, I need to get whatever that thing is to Botswana. So if it is a physical good, the logistics, the infrastructure logistics still need to play a role in that. So, but then again, digital payments, you got to sort it, but you have to also upskill that person with skills to be able to build a digital business. And right now, there are just not enough people who have those skills. Jobs of the future do not exist right now. Whoever's a social media manager watching, your job didn't exist 10 years ago, but now it exists. And we need to skill people up to be able to do whatever that next thing is, and how to grow a business as a female entrepreneur or an entrepreneur in general is going to be a digital play. Whether you're working as a farmer, that at some point is going to be a digital play. So digital is very critical for us to actually encourage and empower young women and young men to be entrepreneurs of the future. And you have to get the skills right, you have to get access to the internet right, and you have to get infrastructure on the ground correct.
Yeah. All themes that we'll follow up on in just a moment. But Arantxa, I do understand that you're a woman with many responsibilities and unfortunately do have to leave us. But as you do, I think it's quite imperative that we source solutions and maybe that you even challenge us and many of the female entrepreneurs in the audience and those who might be watching today to think differently about their participation in the economy and how we can do so within the context of the fourth industrial revolution. What are some of the considerations and solutions that we need to table to ensure that we can fast-track the development of female entrepreneurs as we approach the fourth age?
Yeah, one of the solutions we've tried to put together in partnership with many of those, certainly with those in the panel, but probably with also some in the audience, with Visa, with Google, with the government of Botswana, is we've put together an initiative we've called She Trades, which is basically a commitment from all these partners to work to empower more women in international trade. It's powered by an online platform that any woman anywhere in the world can access free of charge, www.shetrades.com. It allows the woman to register her business, to become visible to the rest of the world, to be able to meet peers with whom to discuss, to have webinars and mentoring and coaching services, to identify investors that would be interested in investing in her business, to, in a way, become an actor in this market. Now, the advice I have for anyone that is listening is, whether you're a man or a woman, whether you're young or old, make a commitment to change whatever you come around you. It's all around us. It's not, we don't have to go on a discovery tour to understand that there are structural impediments that our economies are facing. Make a commitment. You take a simple, today and this month I'm going to do this. I'm going to help mentor a woman entrepreneur. I'm going to buy from a woman entrepreneur. I'm going to make sure that when I give credit, if I'm a banker, I'm going to be asking the question, who is this person, this company coming to me? So make that commitment, and if we all make our commitments and if we all follow our commitments, we will end up changing reality, which is what we are all here committed to.
Small steps and commitments that need to be set in place. She trades, she's next, and she's an economic powerhouse. Those are just some of the themes that we'll continue to explore right after the short ad break. Unfortunately, we do have to let you go, Arantxa, but thank you so much for your contribution to the conversation. That's Arantxa Gonzalez, who's the Executive Director for the International Trade Center. And we're going to take a brief break right now, but we will be back shortly. We will continue to delve into the digital skills required, how we can break down the infrastructure difficulties, and most importantly, interrogate a little bit more about the support that's required for female entrepreneurs to excel across the continent. We'll be back right after this break. Welcome back. You're still watching the CNBC Africa special, coming to you live from the World Economic Forum on Africa for 2019 in Cape Town, in partnership with Visa, as we host a bold conversation about unpacking support that is required for female entrepreneurs to thrive on the continent. As has been established in the first half of our conversation, this is not just a female-focused conversation, but certainly one that speaks to the development of a variety of economies and, of course, impacts on the livelihoods of all individuals across the globe. While we look to enhance on the partnerships that have been developed and some of the themes that have been discussed, and we'll continue to interrogate that even further. A reminder of my guests who have joined me on the panel. To my left, Aida Diarra, who is the Senior Vice President and General Country Manager for Sub-Saharan Africa, Visa. Honorable Minister Bogolu Kenewendo, who's the Minister of Investment, Trade and Industry in Botswana, and Mitch Atagana, Head of Communication and Public Affairs at Google. Now, we're looking to shift this conversation into the third gear now, right? So, as we've established, trade is important, access to markets, and of course, breaking down these barriers that exist. Ida, there's something so critical that you highlighted in the first part of this conversation, which was digital. And many people might be sitting back thinking, Visa talking about digital as well as access to mobile money seems as though they're encouraging the participation of their competitors in this particular market. But that speaks to partnership. The very same theme that Arantxa actually highlighted with regard to enhancing on the digital partnerships that we can exploit in this particular market. How are we seeing the convergence of more mobile payments with traditional players like yourself in the market, especially in understanding the context of the African continent and markets like the East African community, where mobile money payments and telephony players have actually led the charge in providing access to capital? Are we still looking to exploit that opportunity? Are there new opportunities that look to come up? And are there any discrepancies that might exist in how we roll out capital to female entrepreneurs?
You know, building on what you just said, our focus has been all along to develop and bring access and innovation in the payments industry. And the one way to do this is to really capitalize on, the fintechs and the new entrepreneurs that are coming into the ecosystem with innovative solution. It's such a vibrant community designing solutions that are just more convenient for the clients, the financial institutions, the merchants, and the end consumers themselves. And what we're doing is really opening our network for them to come and enter and enhance and enrich the solutions and the value we bring to the ecosystem. And we do that in different ways. Sometimes we directly invest in these fintechs. And what we do is we give them the possibility to grow even faster and expand beyond what they're currently doing. In some cases, we do partnerships. So the investment was the case of Paystack in Nigeria. In the case of partnership, we design solutions together. We enable them to design solutions, and it's the case of DPO, for example, in Kenya, or PaySapal. And then sometimes we create the platform, like Visa Everywhere initiatives, to really give access to these SMEs to pitch for their ideas and then receive funds to help them grow and develop. And we are excited, for example, that this year we had a female entrepreneur from Cameroon who won. She was focusing on educating young girls on creating biochemicals from waste and creating energy from solar capabilities. And this is what we want to continue to do moving forward. And like I said earlier, these SMEs and fintechs and the mobile players are just expanding, the touch points and the realm of possibilities, and makes payments and digital payments even more convenient.
Very necessary in order to ensure that systems also speak to each other. Minister?
I have a follow-up question.
Sure. When is it coming to Botswana?
No, well, yes. I mean, that's a very important follow-up question. No, but, earlier when I said the next unicorn women in tech, I'm very curious, what is the female representation in that fintech space that you are so encouraging at the moment?
You know what we have, what we're seeing in line with the numbers that were shared by Arancha before she left, we have the likes of 30%, women ownership in the fintech community. Yeah, but it's growing, and they're really coming up with innovative solutions. The question is truly, how do you enable them? How do you give them access to the tools and to the business acumen to help them grow and create sustainable businesses?
And bring in more.
Absolutely.
Yeah, how do we bring in more? And I think that is a question that as a government we're also struggling with. How do we encourage more women in the tech space? How do we encourage more women to trade, to manufacture, and not only to be agents, right? To play in a much bigger space.
I think that when you look at, say, tech entrepreneurship, right, which is obviously something that we think about a lot at Google, is you find that so we talked about access to credit and all of that. Female tech entrepreneurs don't get as much investment as men do. However, the largest portion of investment that's come to Africa for tech startup has been in fintech. And so getting more women into fintech is crucial because people are investing in that. But as much as I'm a huge fan of fintech because financial inclusion payments needs to get solved in Africa, there's big opportunities in B2B businesses. Yeah. So we run a program called Launchpad, and one of our entrepreneurs is a company called Voice AI. It's a South African company, and one of the founders, the technical founder, is a woman. And this is a business that can scale to big business, which means they can be profitable. It's not a business that's going to take 20 years to make its first profit. We can get profit right now because there's opportunities for it. And what they do, which I really love, is they allow businesses like Bank and Visa to be able to understand their customer at a fundamental level through context. Yeah. So we need to encourage also investors that are coming to Africa and African investors that, yes, fintech is great, but what are the other sectors on the continent that we need to focus on? Healthcare, education, agriculture. Agri-tech needs to be a thing we think about, especially for female entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Minister.
I
want to throw another one in.
Earlier you were giving an example. You were saying something, and I thought of this example of this young woman in Botswana who's in agri-tech, and she can run her farm from anywhere in the world, and all her systems are on her phone. She can turn on her irrigation, and she is currently designing seedlings. The way that are drought resistant, that are responsive to the soil type that she has, and she is designing all of this in her little farm, and then she runs it on her phone. And I just was so blown away because these are the kind of ideas that we need. But when we talk about women in the tech space, we're not necessarily thinking about those that are in agriculture. We're thinking only about fintech. And I think that also needs to change as you are talking about she's next. She's next in all kinds of tech businesses, especially those that will feed us because we don't want to go hungry.
But that's where the digital skills comes in, right? Because it's one thing to go, great, let's do all of this stuff. I was born in Nigeria, right? Nigeria has great arable land, but getting produce from the farm to the market is problematic. But there's no proper refrigeration, there's no proper logistics. So by the time I get my goods to market, it's all spoiled. I don't make any money from it. But if I had basic digital skills, which allows me to think about this and go, okay, great, I can find basic information. I can look at my plant and know this is the disease it has. And there's so many amazing companies that are building AI technology that your phone, with the camera on your phone, you just go point and it goes, oh, look, that looks like a disease and I need to solve it. So
you mentioned something so critical because I think we need to come to the audience here. How many of you clearly understand what digital skills are? Because in the back of my mind, I often think that it's about coding, right?
No,
and when I think coding, I think binary 011011100. And that's not the case. And we need a clear understanding on digital skills.
It's less than that. So how many of you, sit on your phones and look when you're looking for a restaurant to go eat, you go to Google Maps? There you go. Yeah. How many of you ask on Twitter where to find the best hairdresser? So these are things that businesses need to think about. If I have a business, being on social media is critical. being on maps so people can physically find me. I'm not going somewhere where I can't find how to get there. I don't want to call somebody to get directions. So these are basic digital skills. It's learning how to create a basic website so people trust. We're a society of digital citizens who only trust
If
what
it's
we
online.
look. If we know, okay, they have a website, they have some ratings. Okay, I will go there. And so one of the things we work on is skilling digitally across the continent from a young age to whatever age. So we have a CS First program, which just launched in South Africa, to train young people, and it focus primarily, also there's a huge focus on women for that, to code. Because coding, yes, get that right.
Yeah.
But there's also people who already have businesses who want to know how to move digitally. And so it was train 10 million Africans by 2020. Thankfully, we've trained 4 million and 48% of them are women. And we want that to be 52%. We want to push that more because at the end of the day, like she said, if people always talk about this, if you skill a woman, you skill an entire community.
Yes.
You bring an entire community with you. And getting basic digital skills that doesn't require coding, it's very, very easy.
I was about to follow up to actually say, for female entrepreneurs, many of whom might be present in the room, do they need to learn how to code, especially when it comes to scaling their businesses and tapping into more opportunities within the B2B
You
environment?
don't necessarily need to know how to code, but it's simpler than you think it is. Trust me. There's programs that teach you how to code very simply, but you do need to understand how you use digital to advance your strategy. And I think that's really important because if we think, like I said earlier, every business will be a digital business in some way, in some shape or form. And female entrepreneurs must know how to scale their business beyond their borders digitally. And when I think about the entrepreneurs that I meet, men and women, some of the biggest worries they have is access to market. Right. It's how do I get to the market? I'm here, I'm successful in South Africa, but I need to reach Nigeria, I need to reach South America, how are we creating that access to market? And technology is bridging that gap. I mean, Visa's talked about their payment solution, which is fantastic. And the fact that Visa is open to working with collaborators in this space. So Paystack is also one of our launchpad companies, and they're incredible in terms of the stuff they've done. You've got Yoko in South Africa doing some amazing work as well. But if you can build something on a basic digital platform, and able to scale that business, that's incredible. That's amazing because for the user, at the end of the day, it's how it's affecting them in a fundamental way.
And that also speaks to a challenge that we often face, right, as entrepreneurs and business people, where systems, people, things just don't communicate efficiently, and we need to actually troubleshoot to find solutions. We'll come back to that in just a moment, but I do want us to engage our audience to get their thoughts, their views, and of course their pressing questions that they have regarding the development of more female entrepreneurship, especially in the context of the fourth industrial revolution. Any female entrepreneurs in the room who are driving businesses, employing individuals, and shifting change in the markets? By show of hands? We've got a few. We'd like to get some of your thoughts as well as your feedback with regard to the elements that are being discussed and, of course, adequately addressing the challenges that female entrepreneurs have. So I'm going to put you on the spot like they usually do back in school. Ma'am, I'd ask you to provide us with your feedback. Thereafter, we'll come back to you, ma'am. If you could give us a brief synopsis of the organization that you run and the most pressing issue that you face currently as an entrepreneur.
The biggest challenge I face is we've taken the business out of business rescue, and it's been incredibly difficult to raise funding. And government funds are not accessible. Banking institutions become incredibly difficult to access funds when you have to go through the collateral and the securities. And by the time you go through the process of applying, months have passed, and your critical requirements to actually keep the business afloat gets completely ignored. So, but despite the fact that government talks about, sustaining manufacturing and more women need to be in manufacturing and technology, it's non-existent. And I can tell you every single fund that's available, and whether it's grant funding or banks, I've been involved in many discussions, but it's been 9 months down the line, and we're still carrying the business out of our own pockets. So it's been incredibly difficult. And my male counterparts don't have the same experience. So they can access, IDC funding, have no idea how, but, I'm talking about hundreds of millions of rands without securities. And that's been my experience. So
just to follow up, are you based in South Africa, ma'am?
Yes, I am, in Johannesburg. Our factory's in Midrand, both factories.
we'll get the Minister of Botswana to speak to the Minister of Trade and Industry in South Africa to assist you there. I'd like us to get a response to that, and of course,
relocate to Botswana.
You can just relocate to Botswana.
exactly. Some investment in that particular market to build up on those themes. Really, capital again coming up as a significant issue, and of course, speaking of the challenges that need to be addressed there. How can we fix this? And are there proposed solutions that we need to start thinking about in a broader context with regard to financing, new innovations and forms of financing, and of course the technicalities of the constraints of regulation in this particular market?
I think that situation is exactly what I was saying earlier, that we shouldn't just think about providing capital for SMEs. If someone employs 400 people, I mean, that means you need a couple of million rands in order to capitalize your business. And government funds, I'm the Minister of Trade, but I don't particularly agree with having grants. I think what we can do is, or what we should be doing instead, and this is something that we're considering at home, is taking the grant fund that we have and using it as surety with commercial banks to enable you to get more out of the credit that you want. And we could guarantee, maybe give 75% guarantee for your loan. So what you would get with us might have been 50 million, but if we enable you and we give you the guarantee, you could have access to maybe 100, 150, and that is a model that I think would work better for us, and we're about to pilot it, and I'd be keen to have this conversation with you about what kind of services you require and how best we can service you, but you'd have to move to Botswana. I want those 400 jobs.
Exactly, right?
we have to enable, but it's a big challenge that we have seen, and I have even just last week I was dealing with it at home. One of our brightest entrepreneurs that we've been so pleased to support, she's now experiencing this challenge, and we have to figure out then where does the buck stop with government, and then how do we start bringing in the commercial financiers into play to support the women that we have supported thus far.
Indeed. And even the mentorship as well, assistance from maybe even some of her male counterparts to understand what is it that you're doing different? What is it that you're doing right? Is that another element that we can consider within the corporate space, government spaces, in order to break down those barriers that are found?
I will always advocate for the power of mentorship, right? So the entrepreneurship program that we run relies on mentorship. And one of the biggest feedback we've always received is the access mentors have been able to provide. It's not necessarily doing the introduction to someone, but the blueprint of how we've done it or how this person did it and how they got into the door. But I would also like to against the word assistance from male counterparts, simply because I think women are so capable. Why do you always have to be, okay, great, the guy's got it, how do I get it, right? I think that needs to change. However, I do think mentorship from someone who you do not have the necessary background with is useful, right? One of our head of diversity said to me last week, every time someone gives me a mentor, they always give me another black woman. I know the challenges of a black woman. I don't know the challenge. I don't know how to be a white man. I need to know what the white man is doing,
right?
Because he's getting ahead all the time. So he needs to teach me his ways. So I think that's also useful to have. And governments also need to stop this thing where women have to go through 25 different million hoops just to get funding. Banks need to stop it. When I bought my house, I was told you're a single woman.
Where's your husband?
Where's your husband? You're buying a house. I'm like, yes, I'm buying a house. Let me buy it. I think, I don't know how we change that though. I think that needs to be a conversation that is had at a government level, but also if you look at the people who run big corporates as well, if that doesn't change,
yes,
that's the way they think it's not going to change, because unconscious bias decides how we make decisions sometimes.
Indeed.
So the people who run big organizations, so who is running the 4 banks in South Africa? They're all men. And how do we change some of that to make sure that they're thinking about it in a different way?
And I think this is where the initiatives that we are about to launch fits very well. I believe that in order to get to the changes that we're talking about, there are a couple of things that we need to do. The first one is just creating the awareness that this is happening and be vocal about it. And what we want to do is leverage our network, our brand, to create that momentum and say, you know what, we have a group of women that are entrepreneurs and that are facing specific needs, and we need to mobilize around that. The second important thing we should be doing, and that's what we also aim to do, is creating that network. It's about getting together, understanding the challenges that women are facing, and making sure that, you know, it is highlighted and we capitalize on the experiences of each other. And then it's also about providing the tools, yeah, the relationship, the network, you know, the clients and the banks that are in the network. How do we create the momentum and create awareness there? And that would be one way to get to what you're saying and saying, you know, there is an issue, we need to fix it as stakeholders of the ecosystem.
Yep, and changing that narrative.
Yeah, and I think what you said about creating the networks is very important. We have started relationships with all of our commercial banks, and some have started entrepreneurship development programs that are going to assist those that have big tenders, major contracts, but are struggling with capital, and we can put them through, and those companies can act as surety. So we're creating, or we're giving a bit of a cushion effect through government for these entrepreneurs that have contracts but don't have the capital. And those kind of networks, they assist businesses quite a bit. And there is also a program with UNDP, and Arantxa was talking about hers, She Trades. You list yourself in there, and we are part of this. As an entrepreneur, you list yourself on She Trades platform, and you can find some of the investors there instead of going to the commercial banks where you have been rejected.
Mm-hmm. Can I ask a question to the Minister? How long does it take to register a business in Botswana?
That's a very good question, and I am happy to report that as of June the 3rd, we launched an online business registration system, and within 7 hours, you have your company.
7 hours.
I was gonna say the South African entrepreneurs. How long did it take you to register your business?
Yeah.
3 days.
3 days. Yeah.
Okay. So you are lucky. You are the lucky one. It takes longer in some cases to register your business in South Africa. So this is already a barrier to entry to begin.
Exactly.
You know.
And in addition to that, I am happy to say that we have recently changed legislation that creates flexibility in giving trading and industrial licenses. So if you are not dealing with health and safety and you're in the tech space, you actually don't need a license. You just register to the ministry and say, I am now doing business. You can come and inspect me at any time, and you can continue operating. And I think that will liberalize and ease doing business in Botswana.
Yeah.
Good.
So clearly some opportunities that can be explored across various markets in sub-Saharan Africa, and of course partnering with digital players as well, like Visa and Google, just enhance that opportunity so much more. Well, we'd like to strongly encourage those of you who are in the room, and of course those watching, to continue posting on social media. The official hashtag to use is WIFA19, hashtag WIFA19, and of course tag and tweet at CNBC Africa to share your thoughts and comments with us. Now, I did highlight another female entrepreneur in the audience. If the roving mic could make its way to you, ma'am, as well, just a brief synopsis of the organization that you run and some of the challenges that you face that hopefully we can address here, and maybe even further collaborations with She's Next too.
Sure. So, hi everyone. My name is Nureshka, and I run an e-commerce company. It's called Shoply. We are based in South Africa. We have a national footprint, and we provide custom solutions to allow businesses to trade online. It can be a professional that offers virtual services. It can be somebody that has a physical product. It can be somebody with a virtual product that sells anything like an ebook.
So who needs Amazon when we've got you?
Who needs Amazon? Yes. We basically empowering people to start their own businesses, create entrepreneurship opportunities. And I think it's a very exciting space. I think you all spoke about e-commerce, and you basically spoke about the future of business. We use Google a lot when it comes to Google shopping. It's helped our clients increase sales. It's made a huge impact, I think, for the South African consumers, getting them to the product pages, and it's been amazing. In terms of payment gateways, South Africa has come a long way. About 3 years ago, there weren't as many. Now there's been a dramatic
change. There's so many options and opportunities, which is great. And I think the one challenge that we possibly had was education. South Africa was a bit wary at the beginning in terms of e-commerce. It was an unfamiliar space for them. And so when we met people, when we met clients, we had to explain e-commerce and we had to show them the global growth and the potential. Now it is a bit easier. It's not easy as such. There is still that education that needs to take place, but there is insane opportunity for growth. We're very excited. E-commerce needs to be highlighted more. I think it's an excellent opportunity for women, for them to start their own business, for them to access markets all over the world. It takes your business international. You can now reach anywhere in the world. So very exciting.
Can I ask a question?
Go ahead.
When people, so it sounds like you're Shopify, almost like a Shopify where I can create my own storefront using your platform.
So we actually do it for you. So
Oh,
that's
so you
the
do it
difference.
for- okay.
Exactly. So with Shopify, it's very DIY,
Yeah.
where you create your own store. And what we found is not everyone has the technical ability to do this, and they need assistance. E-commerce is a specialized thing. You need to integrate the payment gateway.
Yeah.
Not everyone can do that. Registering, you need to get your merchant ID, your merchant key, and logistics. You spoke about logistics. It's important. South Africa as well, they had to incorporate more delivery companies. There's competitive pricing. So all those aspects had to come into play. And like
So you do it for the...
So we do it for you. We
Are
help
people
you.
able to pay with SnapScan? So if I just scan my...
Yes.
Okay, good. So
Yes.
that's the next thing I was going to... The reason I was asking my question, because even a society like South Africa, people are still wary about putting their credit card details.
Yes.
Yes.
They're still, my father is an academic with PhDs. He doesn't like to put his credit card details. And I'm
Yes.
like, it's fine. Worst happens, you call your bank, they cancel the card. But so I think that's really important in terms of this mobile
Yes.
payment movement, is that it's a comfort of the customer also hinders growth of business.
Exactly.
So if I'm not comfortable as a customer to spend that money on a store online, that business is not going to grow.
And that takes information as well as
Yeah.
education for the
Yeah.
customer base to understand that they can
Absolutely.
actually trust your platforms, and partnering with the right suppliers and partners as well in that tech space.
Yeah. We've had to intervene as a government. Now at the ministry, we're doing the e-commerce and digital economy strategy. And in addition to that, as per the request of entrepreneurs in that space, we have to provide the security, and we are starting something like a Shopify, but we will not be in business as just to host all these e-commerce stores that have been struggling because people were asking about their credibility and we're not sure about the payment platform or systems that they were using. So we're going to set up that platform in order for them to plug in, and we are looking for partners, ladies.
Talk to Visa, man. I can talk to you about Google Shopping. Visa's the guy.
And we're looking for partners, especially because the main challenge, because some have really been in this business for several years, and they are saying that the main challenge they've had is actually the payment system, the payment platform, and how best do they ensure or guarantee security to their clients. And but the ecosystem is quite young in Botswana, and we're looking for partners that can help us to grow, especially and cross-border
Yes.
partners and cross-border trade.
And there's no such thing as a coincidence, and that brings us to the reason that we've gathered here this morning to ensure that we see the launch and, of course, collaborative efforts that are required to see the successful launch of She's Next here on the African continent. And with that said, as we start with our concluding remarks and commentary, for many individuals who are here in the room, they're looking to participate, they're looking to provide feedback, but of course might be a sense of anxiety to understand what is it that we're trying to achieve, and of course the role that they can all play within their respective spheres. Ada, I'd like to come to you to provide us with guidelines as to how do we take this forward. We'll launch She's Next today. What are the objectives, and what's the target that we're moving towards in the next 12 months, the next 48 months, and the next 5 years to actually change the narrative around female entrepreneurship as well as economic growth across the continent?
Yeah, thank you. And this is just an amazing initiative. I talked about it a little bit earlier in reinforcing the importance of creating that awareness and understanding of the special needs and requirements of female entrepreneurship. We're growing. The number is increasingly growing, and in Africa, it's even higher than in the rest of the world. 38% in Africa compared to 30%, and the numbers I'm referring to is the number of women as entrepreneurs. So we believe that with the launch of She Next Africa, we're going to be creating that platform that will enable access to tools, enable access to knowledge, and trainings, and create that ability for women to be more financially inclusive. And we want to make sure that we make it as available as possible to all entrepreneurs in the sub-region.
Mitch, as we conclude, your closing remarks for entrepreneurs as well as those looking to support female entrepreneurs when it comes to understanding the digital age, digital skills, and capitalizing on technology to enhance growth and development of female entrepreneurship.
Yeah, so at the beginning of this year for International Women's Day, we launched a program across Africa called Women Will. And the idea is women will create, women will build, and women will empower. And one of the key pillars of that is skills and entrepreneurship. It's how do you foster entrepreneurship in the female community, and how do you help grow that entrepreneurship and scale it across the continent. So if you are a female entrepreneur out there, come find us, talk to Visa too, talk to the minister. Botswana wants you guys to move to Botswana.
Yes. There's a lot of space there.
It's a lot of space in Botswana.
Yes.
Move to Botswana. But I think it's also really important for us to realize that, again, this is not a conversation we should have in isolation. Mm-hmm. This is not about women trying to solve women's solutions for women. It is about us trying to solve global solutions for people. And I'm so glad to see that even if it is an all-female panel discussing a female-central topic, there are men in the room who are listening. And I hope you are listening and you are taking notes. And the next time you sit in a pitch as a startup and you realize that there are very few women in that pitch, you take a stand against that and go, why are we not inviting more women to pitch? Yeah. When you look at investment and you're sitting there and going, wait a second, this company has invested in me, but I see 0 female founders in their portfolio of investments, you take a stand against that. Yeah. And that's really, really important for us to truly have change.
Exactly. Minister, I'll leave it to you to wrap it up, because so often governments do face a lot of criticism for not creating an enabling environment. But I'm giving you the opportunity, given the experience that you have in your portfolio in Botswana, to actually pass the baton forward, to say, look, the private sector, these are the elements that you can actually bring into play, and of course enhancing on the collaborative efforts that can be explored for all parties to succeed when it comes to initiatives such as She's Next.
Well, I think we are at a very crucial time in the world right now, and it's not just about women's participation in the economy. It's also about women's participation in decision making and feeling like they too have a place in the world, and they too have a right to exist. Mm-hmm. And when we want to talk about them having, or us as women having a space in the economy and thriving and trading and being next and willing, then the first point should be, are we alive? And we need to start talking about the safety of women and allowing us to own our spaces. It's not really even about allowing us to own our space, but let us just coexist, because this world is big enough for all of us. And from a government's perspective, we need to ensure that all the legislation is in place. But I think at the end of it all, it's not necessarily about creating an enabling environment. It's about, one, as a people, accepting that we need each other to succeed. If you're afraid of seeing success in the next person, then you are most certainly afraid of seeing success in you. Yes. And if the next person is a female and is a woman, then it means even you as a man, then you do not want that success. So I think we should will success in another person so that it can be willed upon us. And second, all of us have stories, and I really do not like it when someone says, I have a mother, I have a sister. and so
I
I
am a
want to change,
person,
and I
period.
want to change this policy.
Yeah.
But we all can relate to the challenges and struggles that women face, and in whatever space that you play in, it's important that you recognize the vulnerabilities and the uniqueness of challenges that women, especially entrepreneurs, face, and come to terms with how best you can facilitate and assist in those challenges. But most importantly, let's just coexist, because when you thrive, I thrive. When I thrive, you thrive. We all thrive.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Excellence across the board, and of course success across all different types of diversity that can be experienced. Ladies, thank you so much for your participation and the feedback that you provided for us today. Tough barriers to entry, of course, that we do need to cover, and of course understanding the dynamics of the challenges that many female entrepreneurs face. But one thing is quite clear. She's the next to prosper, she's the next to start a business, and she's the next to drive the growth and development of communities and countries across sub-Saharan Africa. But she's not doing it selfishly, but rather for the advancement of all people, as has been derived from our panel discussion this morning. Thank you so much for joining us for the CNBC Africa Special in partnership with Visa, celebrating the successful launch of She's Next, where we're looking to continue to support the development of female entrepreneurs across sub-Saharan Africa for the betterment of all environments. It's been a pleasure being with you, and thank you so much to my panelists as well for sharing their insight with us. Continue the conversation on social media. Until next time, it's goodbye for now.
Thank you.